I would say within the fire industry, unfortunately, the only time that we see change is when there's a major event like Grenfell or Hall or anything like that. Unfortunately, it's not progressive change through people's own endeavours. Regulation is a must. You see other disciplines like electricians and gas engineers that have to be part of a regulatory body, whereas passive fire protection is not regulated at the moment.
The industry are talking about competency now. They haven't always. So it's great that there's a real spotlight on it within the industry. There's talk everywhere about this. And within the fire safety community, it's always been something that's critical, because this is why things, fire risk assessments, for example, have been poorly written. There's been poor fire strategies. There's been poor and inept skilled workers working on passive fire protection. And we've ended up in a situation where, I hate to say it, but that's kind of the precursor for things like Grenfell. That's focused the attention now, which is great, which should have happened a long time ago. But that focus of attention by splitting out the working groups from the Hackett review has allowed competence to be a real focus for the industry. So driving out of that working group on the focus of competency, we're starting to see that businesses, contractors, and everyone in the industry are really testing that and asking those questions and saying, what is your competence? We've seen recently, even just in terms of applying for insurance, the insurance sector inherently think about safety of buildings in a different way to what we would in a safety way. But what they're asking for is, what is your competency level? So before we can apply any sort of PI to your business, show us the CVs of the guys, show us their experience, show us how that collective experience and competence works together, then as a business we can insure you. For me, that's a step change, because that means that the insurance industry is interested in our level of competence, so we can fire that across the business and across the industry in terms of how we recruit. So competence is key, but it's one thing that's only really recently been the real key driver for change, I think. Because the focus on competence, it kind of follows the compliance focus as well. So they run side by side, because if you've got a competent person, they can tell you if you've got a compliant system. So they do run simultaneously, and it's a concurrent activity. So if we're looking from any legislative change, we want to enhance competence, that's got to give us compliance, because if we've got the right people looking at the right information, whether that's design details all the way through to installation and how it should be done. So by enhancing competence, we're continually improving that stream as well.
We come up with problems on some projects that we work on where there's been lack of consideration of good health and safety at an early enough stage in the project. So, for example, many of our clients build out on either brownfield or greenfield sites. Those sites are constrained obviously by the boundaries and maybe road network or other restrictions outside of the site. It's very important as to where to put the building within the plot. So one example we have is some properties that we've been involved in late, the buildings have been rammed up against the back boundary, and then there's still a requirement when you look at the materials that the building's been specified to be made up of, need maintenance. So whether that be soffit and fascia boards at high level, whether it be the windows, maybe softwood, timber that needs repainting every 5 years or so. But without decent access, you're not going to get to it without maybe scaffolding it. Whereas if you provided better space, you could have reached them by a cherry picker, or a mute, as we call them. So if we're engaged early, we'll identify those potential difficulties of access and maintenance and advise either non-maintenance materials to be used, or just moving the building slightly away from the back boundary fence to provide access for a cherry picker. And it's simple things like that that can save a lot of money during the lifespan of that building.